I went to see my ex a week after our breakup, hoping we could get back together. But the moment I opened the door, I saw him bending down, kissing another girl. She was wearing my nightgown. And that girl wasn't just anyone. It was my roommate. Just last night, she told me she might be moving out. Said the guy she'd been chasing for ages had finally agreed to date her. And even asked her to move in. I was foolish enough to congratulate her. Happy she'd finally gotten what she wanted. Turns out, the man she was moving in with was my ex-boyfriend. The one I'd broken up with only a week ago. He really didn't waste any time. Chapter 1. I froze at the doorway, taking an involuntary step back. My roommate gasped when she saw me. Anna. Chad turned around at the sound of her voice. For a split second, his eyes widened when they met mine, but what followed wasn't guilt or surprise. It was calm. Detached. Almost cold. He adjusted his shirt as if nothing had happened, then walked toward me, his tone flat and composed. "What are you doing here?" My gaze dropped to the fresh red marks on his collarbone. Something lodged painfully in my chest, making it hard to breathe. The words I'd rehearsed, asking him to get back together, died in my throat. My roommate stepped forward, forcing a faint, awkward smile. "I didn't bring a nightgown, so I borrowed yours. Hope you don't mind." A sharp ringing filled my head. When I didn't respond, she hurried to explain. "Anna, please don't get the wrong idea. Chad and I only got together after you two broke up." She was so desperate to clear herself that it almost looked comical. I could only stand there, feeling like the fool in someone else's joke. It took me a long moment to force out anything. "My stuff's still here. I came to pick it up." Chad hesitated, his face unreadable. "Come in," he said finally. The moment I stepped inside, I understood his silence. The succulent I'd planted on the windowsill was gone. The matching mugs and toothbrushes in the bathroom, replaced. The curtains, the sheets, the duvet cover, all changed to her favorite color. Even the framed photo of Chad and me as kids had been swapped out for one of her. There was nothing left for me to pack. This little apartment we'd once decorated together. It no longer had anything to do with me. Just 1 week. Only a week. Everything I owned had been shoved into a single suitcase. Abandoned in the corner of the balcony. Right beside the crate holding my dog. Chapter 2. The midsummer air was thick and heavy, the kind that stuck to your skin and made every breath feel like work. I crouched down and stared blankly at the dog inside the crate. Lucky, lying there with his head on his paws, listless and quiet. We'd found him on our first date, a scruffy little stray wandering near the park. Because that day was March 7th, Chad named him Lucky. He'd laughed as he pulled me into his arms, whispering against my ear. "Every time you call his name, I want you to remember our first kiss." But that was a long time ago. Everything was different now. Lucky. His drooping ears perked up at the sound of my voice. When he saw me, he let out a soft whine, tail thumping eagerly. Then stopped, realizing he was still locked inside the crate. He sat back down obediently, still wagging, still hoping. My throat tightened, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I stood and rushed into the living room. "Take whatever else you want, I don't care," I said, voice shaking. But Lucky was abused before we found him. He's terrified of being locked. "You know that," Chad cut me off, glancing briefly at my roommate. "She's afraid of dogs," he said flatly. The rest of my words caught in my throat. She's afraid of dogs. So that was the reason. A dull ache spread through my chest, slow and merciless. Chapter 3. The first time I sensed something off between Chad and my roommate was about 2 months ago. Graduation was approaching, and he just received several impressive job offers. He was constantly busy. Sometimes, I'd text him at night and wouldn't get a reply until the next morning. When I called, he'd hang up after a few sentences, saying he had things to do. He's just swamped, don't overthink it, my roommate told me when she noticed how down I'd been lately. On Valentine's Day, she handed me 2 movie tickets. I took it as a sign, a chance to fix whatever distance had grown between me and Chad. So I asked him out to a movie. Halfway through, I noticed he seemed distracted, glancing at his phone every few minutes. "Anna, I need to take a call," he whispered. "I'll be right back." Before I could say anything, he grabbed his jacket and hurried out. He never came back. When the credits rolled and the crowd began filing out, I spotted him leaning against a wall outside the theater, head down, lost in thought. The top 2 buttons of his shirt, ones he always left undone, were fastened tight. When he saw me, he spoke as if nothing had happened. "Sorry. Work talk. Lost track of time." I asked, what kind of work call takes an entire movie? He didn't even bother to make up a proper excuse. "If you want to think too much about it," he said coolly, "I can't help that." Back in the dorm, I scrolled through my phone, unable to settle my thoughts. Then I saw my roommate's new post. A photo, 2 half-finished milk teas, and a pair of movie ticket stubs. No caption, just a heart emoji. My breath caught for a moment. The dorm was quiet. Only the faint sound of our breathing filled the room. Still, I felt suffocated. "You went to the theater next to mine, didn't you?" I asked softly.
"Yeah,"
she said. "I don't like romance movies." "With someone you like?" She was silent for a long time. Then she gave a small, almost relieved laugh.
"Yeah."
That night, we went for a walk around the track. I stayed quiet, walking a few steps ahead. Chad noticed right away that something was off. He reached out, taking my hand. "What's wrong?" I said only one thing. Chloe was at that theater too. The air froze between us, just for a second. Then he squeezed my hand, his warmth slowly easing the chill in my fingers. "Anna, it's just a coincidence." I stared at him for a long time, at the calm and faint regret in his eyes. In the end, I didn't pull my hand away. We'd been together for so many years, each other's only imagined future. I shouldn't doubt his love over a few suspicious details. Besides, Chloe had always said she liked someone else. I'd even seen his photo. She'd chased him for years and never dated anyone in college because of him. She and Chad couldn't possibly have anything between them. Could they? Chapter 4. Maybe it was just my imagination, but after that day, Chad seemed colder, distant in a way that left no room for warmth. As the thesis presentation approached, he grew even busier. Days blurred together, and I realized we hadn't seen each other in almost a week. Then came his birthday. I baked him a cake, wrapped his present carefully, and went to his apartment, hoping to surprise him. When I opened the door, laughter and chatter filled the room. Chad stood surrounded by friends, cutting a cake. And my roommate was right there beside him, his arm loosely around her shoulders. Her hand resting on his as they held the knife together. The room went quiet for one painfully long second. Chad didn't flinch. His expression stayed blank. His hand didn't move away. "Keep going," he said evenly. It was Chloe who withdrew her hand, glancing at me with a look I couldn't read. Someone nearby tried to smooth things over, forcing a laugh. "Hey, it's Chloe's birthday too, so we just thought they could cut the cake together. Don't take it the wrong way." The clumsy excuse only made it worse. My chest felt like it was splintering from the inside. How could I not take it the wrong way? How could anyone not? Every doubt, every moment of unease I'd buried over the past weeks solidified in that instant. After everyone left, I confronted Chad. Or maybe it wasn't a confrontation, just me falling apart. "I'm your girlfriend. Why didn't you even tell me about your birthday party? You're too busy to text me back. But not too busy to cut a cake with her?" By the end, my voice was cracking. "Chad, do you even want to be with me anymore?" He stayed silent. The same silence that once felt comforting now sounded like the end. My legs gave out, and I sank down, holding onto a chair for balance. I buried my face in my knees and cried quietly. The Chad who used to tell me everything. Who once said he'd marry me right after graduation. The one who never let me overthink. Had nothing left to say to me. In a rush of anger and despair, I said the words I couldn't take back. Let's break up. For the first time that night, he looked at me. His eyes were cold. Do whatever you want. Chapter 5. On the 5th day after our breakup, one of Chad's friends came to play peacemaker. That night, we showed up to celebrate his birthday out of nowhere. He didn't plan any of it. Look, Anna, he made mistakes, sure. But he's been under a lot of pressure finishing his thesis. Don't you think you've been a little too attached lately? Even couples need some space, right? My roommate sighed beside him, sounding helpless. Anna, I already told you, I like someone else. You've seen his picture. Chad's your boyfriend. Why would I ever try to steal him from you? Their words lingered in my head for a long time. Maybe I was being unreasonable. Maybe I'd overreacted. I decided to talk to Chad calmly, to fix things between us. But when I showed up at his place, I walked right into that scene. Barely a week after we broke up. He'd already accepted my roommate's confession. He really didn't waste a second, did he? Chapter 6. That night, I took Lucky with me. Since pets weren't allowed in the dorm, I had no choice but to leave him at my parents' house for a while. When I got back to campus, I curled up under my blanket, my mind replaying that image of them, kissing, touching, maybe even more. My scalp prickled, my chest heavy and tight, like I couldn't breathe. So I did something impulsive. I vented on Reddit, in a relationship forum called, How Do You Deal with an Ex Who Moves On Instantly? I poured everything out, all the confusion, the anger, the humiliation of the past few days. By morning, the post had blown up. My phone was blowing up with notifications. Why did he agree to the breakup so fast? Sounds like he was already prepared. Exactly. There's no such thing as instant rebound. That's just an excuse for the other woman to move in guilt-free. Through the location tag and some details I mentioned, people figured out our university, and then, inevitably, figured out it was me and Chloe. The thread spread like wildfire. Even classmates joined the discussion. Chloe always looked so innocent. Didn't expect she was the side chick. Gross. I know her boyfriend, math department guy, tall and good-looking, nice voice too. No wonder that green tea girl went after him. Am I the only one who noticed she said his shirt buttons were all fastened when he came back? Wonder what he was hiding. Amid the flood of comments, one suddenly stood out. I'm not defending anyone, but posting such private details online, don't you think that's just fueling harassment? Maybe everyone should calm down. Replies came fast. Nice try, Chloe. At least use your main account.
Yeah.
Getting defensive already? Must have hit a nerve. Within minutes, that comment was deleted, and the account disappeared too. I stared at the screen, not sure how to feel anymore. My phone buzzed nonstop, dozens of missed calls, countless messages. All from Chad. I turned the phone off, too drained to deal with it, and went downstairs to grab something to eat. From a distance, I saw him waiting outside my dorm. The moment he spotted me, he strode over, his voice cold and sharp. Delete the post. Chapter 7. I stared at his face, so familiar, yet suddenly so foreign, and couldn't stop myself from asking. When did it start between you two? The night at the movies? Or was it earlier? Chad's expression didn't change. Anna, does it really matter now? He didn't answer me directly, but he didn't deny it either. And that silence told me everything. A bitter laugh slipped out. I didn't even know who I was laughing at, him or myself. If you didn't love me anymore, you could have just said so. I wouldn't have begged or made a scene, so why? Enough. His voice cut through mine, cold and edged with warning. Letting this blow up online won't do you any good. Delete the post. His tone was calm but carried the kind of chill that meant his patience was wearing thin. I looked at him, dazed for a moment. Was this really the same Chad I once knew? I remembered when we were kids. I didn't come from much, and there was this girl in our class who hated me for it. One day she accused me of stealing her hair clip. She yanked my hair, pulled the ribbon clip from my bag, and shoved it into my hair with a sneer. Bet you've never worn anything like this before. Stealing a cheap bow, how poor are you? Everyone called me a thief. Everyone except Chad. He stepped forward, voice steady and calm, and said he'd seen the girl slip the clip into my bag herself. Even now, I could still remember the way his cool fingers brushed against my scalp as he carefully untangled that ribbon from my hair. That was how we became close. But now, that same boy, the quiet one who used to protect me, wouldn't even let me finish a sentence. The person he wanted to protect wasn't me anymore. My throat tightened. My chest burned with a mix of sadness and disbelief. At last, I managed to say, quietly but firmly, I'm not deleting it. Then I turned and ran. That night, when I went downstairs to pick up my dinner, I noticed people whispering and glancing my way. Their looks sharp, amused, judgmental. Guess someone's desperate for attention, one of them muttered. A bad feeling hit me. I ran upstairs, opened my phone, and checked the post. Someone had written a new reply beneath mine. With photos. Proof that she was cheating long before the breakup. It was a long, detailed post accusing me of sneaking around with another man. Of making up stories to frame my ex and his new girlfriend. And worse, there was a picture. In it, I was standing in front of a hotel with a tall, lean guy. My arm was hooked through his, and his hand rested lightly on my waist. Close, intimate. The lighting was dim, but you could still see the man's head tilted toward me. And no, it wasn't Chad. Chapter 8. Maybe because my original post had gone so viral, that new reply exploded right along with it. Within hours, people switched sides. The ones who had cursed out Chloe were now tearing into me. And saying far worse things. Then a comment climbed to the top. Wait, isn't that guy from the photo Jason from a university? The one everyone calls the campus heartthrob? No way. Jason would never go for her. I heard he has a girlfriend, apparently the school's beauty queen. Well. So Anna was a homewrecker too. Guess karma really came full circle. I could hear Chloe laughing on the other end of the line. So what if it's true, she said, amused. You started it, Anna. I'm just responding. I was about to reply when she suddenly gasped. Still on the phone, she said with a breathy little laugh, her voice shaky but smug. Then I heard him, Chad's voice, cool and careless. What's there to talk to her about? The next moment, the line went silent. Except for the sound of heavy, uneven breathing. And then, unmistakably, the faint rasp of a zipper. I hung up instantly. My hand shook so hard I nearly dropped the phone. I texted Jason right away. I'm so sorry. You got dragged into this because of me. I'll handle it. Really, I'm sorry. His reply came quickly. It's fine. 2 short words. But I still felt a little relief. The truth was, we barely knew each other. He didn't deserve any of this. Jason was a friend of my cousin's. Half a year ago, my cousin brought him to town for a visit, and I helped them book a hotel. That night, while I was looking down at my phone replying to messages, a car nearly hit me. He'd grabbed my arm just in time and pulled me back. Chloe had been there too. She must have taken that photo then. It's strange, really, how the world works. Even after my cousin, Jason, and I all came forward to explain. Even after we showed proof of the hotel booking in their names. People refused to believe us. They didn't want the truth. They wanted the drama. The scandal, the thrill of choosing a side. On campus, I could feel the whispers following me everywhere. Stares. Snickers. People turning to look as I walked by. And then, one day, Chloe sent me a message. She wanted to meet. Face to face. Chapter 9. My cousin offered to go with me, worried I wouldn't be able to handle it alone. I told him no. We agreed to meet at a cafe. When I arrived, the two of them were already sitting together, waiting. Anna, you're here. I ignored Chloe's greeting and sat down, expression blank. I could feel Chad's cold stare on me, but I kept my eyes on her. What do you want to talk about? Talk? She covered her mouth with a dramatic little laugh. You're not really in a position to make demands right now. Her tone made me want to laugh, angry, bitter laughter. Chloe, the guy you liked, it was Chad all along, wasn't it? You lied to me from the start. Yes, she said easily, almost proudly. I fell for him the first time I saw him. My fingers curled tightly around my cup. That night at the theater, he went to your screening, didn't he? No. I froze. We went together to, she paused for effect, her voice dripping with satisfaction, the restroom. Enough. I cut her off sharply, not wanting to hear another disgusting word. Even though I'd suspected as much, hearing it confirmed still made my chest twist in pain. This was my fault, she said, pretending to sound apologetic, but there was no remorse in her voice. I can delete that post about you and Jason. But in return, you'll delete your own post, and publicly apologize to me. Not a chance. My whole body trembled as I shot to my feet. Then she dropped a stack of photos on the table. Delete the post? Impossible. Apologize? Even more impossible. The words died on my lips the moment I saw the photos. My blood turned to ice. How do you even know about these? How? I stared at the pictures, mind going blank as memories I'd buried deep began flashing, one after another, like shards of glass. That time, after Chad had stepped in to defend me and exposed the girl who'd framed me for stealing her bow clip, she started holding a grudge against him. She had an older brother at another school, a street thug type, so hardly anyone dared cross her. For a while, Chad always wore long sleeves and a mask, even on hot days. When I finally noticed the bruises on his body, he didn't say a word, just sat there quietly while I applied ointment. I remember crying as I dabbed the cuts on his arm, my hands shaking. He winced but still forced a smile, clumsily trying to comfort me. I'm fine, really. Don't cry. It doesn't even hurt. Then one day, I passed by an alley and saw her brother grinding his heel into Chad's hand, pressing down, twisting. Only then did I realize what he'd been enduring all that time. I ran over and pulled at the guy's leg, begging him to stop. Instead, he grabbed my jaw, forcing me to look up at him. Well, he said, smirking, if you want me to let him go, give me something in return, something to film. I looked at Chad, unconscious and bleeding on the ground. Tears streamed down my face as I nodded. Later, somehow, Chad managed to get those photos back. He'd held me tight afterward, eyes red, voice trembling. I'll never let anyone hurt you again, he said. Now Chloe's voice echoed those same words, cold and cruel. If you don't delete the post and apologize, I can't promise those pictures won't get out. I'll never let anyone hurt you again. What will your parents think if they see them? What will those people online say? You don't want your life ruined, do you? I'll never let anyone hurt you again. Her voice mixed with Chad's old promises, spinning in my head until everything blurred. My ears buzzed, my thoughts tangled. But how could Chloe have those photos? How could she possibly know? You want to know how I found them, she said evenly, each word sharp as a needle. You've already guessed, haven't you? A ringing sound filled my ears. I turned to Chad, stunned. He avoided my eyes. Chapter 10. I stood frozen in place. The only sound I could hear was my own whisper, why? You said you'd protect me. Chad's face went pale, so pale it almost looked drained of life. He grabbed Chloe's wrist. I told you, all she needed to do was delete the post. Why the hell did you bring those photos? She said she wouldn't delete it. Didn't you hear her just now? Chloe tried to shake his hand off, but he held on. She stared at him, eyes wide with disbelief. Chad, you're the one who told me about it in the first place. Don't tell me you're suddenly feeling sorry for her now? He froze. After a long silence, he turned toward me stiffly. Anna, listen to me, I didn't think she'd actually. I grabbed the coffee cup from the table and hurled it straight at him. It hit his shoulder, but he didn't even flinch. He just stared at me, blankly, numbly. In his eyes, I saw a reflection of myself, distorted, furious, hateful. Chad, I said through clenched teeth, you disgust me. That memory, the one I'd spent years trying not to remember, rose like a nightmare I couldn't wake from. Even now, whenever I saw a ribbon or bow, my whole body would shake uncontrollably. Sometimes I wondered if Chad had ever really loved me. If he had, how could he have turned something so cruel, so humiliating, into a story to share with someone else? Our argument had drawn attention. People around us began whispering. Hey, doesn't that girl look familiar? Isn't she the one who stole someone's boyfriend and then got dumped herself?
Yeah.
That's her. I've seen that photo. A few of them even raised their phones to take pictures. Put the damn phones down. Chad shouted. Startled, they quickly backed off. I straightened my back, my voice steady. I'm not deleting my post. And I'm not apologizing. Chloe stared at me in disbelief. You're not afraid? I set my phone face up on the table, the red light flashing. It was recording. I stopped it, saved the file, and wrapped my fingers tightly around the phone. You can spread those photos right now if you want. I met her gaze, calm and clear. But the moment you do, it becomes a crime. I'll go straight to the police, and this recording goes with me. Her face drained of color. After a long pause, she spat out the words through her teeth. You're really not afraid those photos will be seen by everyone? I stayed silent for a moment. When it happened, I was too young. All I knew was how to keep quiet and endure it. I didn't even dare tell my family. I was scared they'd worry, scared of gossip, scared of the pity in their eyes. But when I think about it now, what was there to be afraid of? Being framed wasn't my fault. Having those photos taken by someone cruel wasn't my fault. And even being too terrified back then to report it, that wasn't my fault either. The ones at fault were the people who hurt others for fun. The ones who stood by and judged. And the ones like you, who used those photos to threaten me. Chloe's face had gone pale. I looked straight at her and finally said what I meant to say. Of course, threatening someone with photos is a crime, too. And with this recording, I can report it right now. Graduation's just around the corner. You wouldn't want to be expelled, would you? She glared at me. What do you want? I didn't hesitate for a second. First, return all the photos to me. Second, delete the post about me and Jason. Third, post a clarification and a public apology to both of us. Before Chloe could speak, Chad said quickly, okay. His lips were pale, his eyes clouded with something complicated. I'm sorry, Anna. For the next half hour, I watched as Chloe deleted her post, then typed out a new one, an apology. Within minutes, it started trending again. Knew there'd be a twist. Guess the mistress finally got exposed. Not only stole her friend's boyfriend but made up lies too. Poor Anna, she didn't deserve that. I gathered the photos on the table. Is that all of them? That's everything, Chad said quietly, his voice low and unsteady. Anna, you don't have to treat me like I'm the enemy. I ignored him, slipped the photos into my bag, and walked out of the cafe. I heard him call my name behind me, but I didn't look back. Outside, I called my cousin and told him everything was settled, leaving out the part about the photos. After the call, I stood on the sidewalk, staring blankly into space. Just as I was about to hail a cab, someone stepped out of the cafe. Jason. For a moment, we both froze, caught off guard. Then he gave me a small nod. Anna. Chapter 11. We found a quiet spot outside and sat down. I noticed he'd ordered a few desserts from the waiter. You saw everything, didn't you? I asked. Jason hesitated for a moment, then nodded. I was sitting one row ahead of you. I fell silent. You handled it really well, he said, meeting my eyes. If you hadn't started recording beforehand, things probably wouldn't have gone your way. They clearly didn't expect you to have evidence. I gave a faint smile but didn't reply. Jason smiled too. Your cousin told me you're soft-hearted, asked me to check on you while I was in town. Looks like you didn't need me at all. The waiter brought the desserts. I picked up a fork, cut into the pancake, and took a bite. If I'd had even a tenth of the courage I have now back then, I said quietly, maybe I wouldn't have been bullied like that. Jason shook his head. That's not how you should see it. If the people who hurt others had restrained even a tenth of their cruelty, there wouldn't have been anyone to bully. If the bystanders back then hadn't been so silent, maybe the victim wouldn't have been hurt a second time. He looked at me, steady, gentle, and sincere. That's how it should be said. I stared at him, caught off guard. Learning to control yourself, he added softly, has always been advice for the abuser, not the victim. Something inside me tightened, warm and painful at once. My nose stung. Thank you, I whispered. After paying the bill, we walked down the street together. The air between us grew quiet, almost peaceful. Trying to lighten the mood, I said. I heard your girlfriend's the campus beauty. After everything that's happened lately, you'd better go back and make it up to her. He looked at me for a long second, then suddenly smiled. I blinked, confused, just as a car pulled out from a side street. Before I could react, a strong hand gripped my waist and pulled me out of the way. His chest brushed lightly against my cheek. Then I heard his calm, unmistakable voice. The rumor's not true, he said. I don't have a girlfriend. Chapter 12. That night after I got back, Chad sent me a text message. I saw you and Jason outside. You were standing really close. I blocked him on everything. Not because I owed him an explanation, but because even if something were going on between me and Jason, he had no right to question me like that. It was the busiest time of the semester of finals, thesis work, graduation prep. I spent my days running back and forth between the library and the dorm, sometimes forgetting to eat. And suddenly, Chad seemed to have all the time in the world. Whether it was coincidence or not, every time I returned from the library, I'd find him standing downstairs, silent, watching me. When our eyes met, he'd look away and leave without a word. Like he just came to see me, nothing more. I told myself he was crazy. On the day of the graduation pictures, Chloe didn't show up. I overheard a few girls whispering nearby. Did you hear? Chloe's in the hospital, seriously injured.
Yeah.
It's all over the group chat. Someone said she bullied a girl in middle school so badly she ended up paralyzed. 2 days ago, the girl's grandfather stabbed her multiple times. I heard that too. The old man's dying of cancer, so he just wanted revenge before he goes. Serves her right. Karma's real. My train ticket home was already booked. I lay on my bed scrolling through my feed when my cousin sent a message. Sis, we're going camping tomorrow. Someone you know is coming too. I didn't have to ask who, he meant Jason. After thinking for a bit, I replied politely. I've got plans tomorrow. He texted back immediately. Don't tell me you've sworn off love just because you dumped that jerk? I replied. Let's just say I'm not planning to date anyone for a while. I thought that would be the end of it. I got out of bed to pour a glass of water, then another message popped up. Jason's downstairs at your dorm right now. I nearly choked on the water. I glanced out the window. It was raining, thunder rumbling in the distance. Without thinking, I grabbed an umbrella and ran downstairs. As I crossed the corridor, almost reaching the dorm entrance, another message came in, this time with a smug emoji. You sure you don't like him? You're already running down there with an umbrella. I finally realized it was a prank and rolled my eyes. Even if it were you down here, I'd still bring an umbrella, I texted back. He replied with mock despair. What do you mean, even if it were me? Sis, don't you love me anymore? I didn't bother replying. I was about to turn back upstairs when I heard a familiar voice behind me. Anna. Chapter 13. Chad stood there in the rain, completely drenched, his hair plastered to his forehead, water streaming down his face. Through the curtain of rain, his dark eyes found mine, silent and unreadable. What are you doing here? I asked flatly. I don't know, he said, voice low, almost mocking himself. I heard your girlfriend's in critical condition, I said, expressionless. She might never wake up. Shouldn't you be? We broke up, he interrupted, his gaze fixed on me, as if waiting to see my reaction. I almost laughed. In fact, I did. Don't tell me you've suddenly realized it was all a mistake, I said with a cold smile. That deep down, you actually loved me? Chad, do you even hear yourself? You make me sick. His jaw tightened, his eyes dark and restless. Anna, please, just listen. Listen to what? I snapped. How you cheated on me with Chloe. How, while I sat waiting for you in that theater, you were in the bathroom with her. Or maybe how you pushed me away until I finally broke up with you? Chad went white, lips trembling, but no words came out. You knew all of that would destroy me, I said, my voice shaking despite myself. And you still did it. I tried to keep my tone calm, but the bitterness bled through. Just tell me one thing, why did you tell Chloe about that incident? For a long moment, there was only the sound of rain between us. Then his hoarse voice came, barely audible. After it happened, I felt so guilty, so sorry for you. I told myself I'd pretend it never happened, that I'd protect you from then on. But I couldn't forget. I hated myself for not protecting you back then. His eyes were bloodshot, and I couldn't tell whether the water running down his cheeks was rain or tears. Either way, it didn't stop falling. Every time I touched you, he said quietly, voice trembling, every time I saw you try so hard to accept it, though I knew you hated it, I kept imagining whether those men touched you the same way. His voice cracked. It made me sick. It made me jealous. When Chloe showed up, I started to pull away from you, and got closer to her instead. I thought maybe, if I could accept someone else, I could finally forget you, and everything tied to that memory. Half a year ago, Chloe confessed to me. She even showed me that photo of you and Jason. I told myself, or maybe forced myself to believe, that you were the one who betrayed me first. I drank that night, and I told her about what happened. By the end, his voice had broken completely. Anna. I regret it. I really regret it. Then he dropped to his knees, right in front of me. Please forgive me. A sharp bitterness rose in my throat. Not sadness, not pity, just something hollow and cold. In that moment, I finally understood. He had never truly loved me. He hadn't loved Chloe either. The only person he ever cared about was himself. He couldn't let go of that past, but he'd never said a word. Instead, he let his guilt fester, turning it into cruelty, into control. He'd found excitement in betrayal, in keeping me blind. If he had told me even once that he didn't love me anymore, I would have let him go. But he didn't. He wanted me there, just so he could keep feeling powerful. He was no longer the boy who once stood up for me. The one whose face turned red when I smiled at him. I'm still grateful he defended me back then. Proved I wasn't a thief. But if I could go back, I'd rather he hadn't. Because from the very start, maybe we were just a mistake. I turned away, refusing to look at him again. My voice came out sharp, each word cutting clean and cold. If you want my forgiveness, I said, then die. Don't ever come near me again. I never want to see you for the rest of my life. Chapter 14. After that day, Chad never appeared in front of me again. After graduation, I found a job that matched my major. Jason and my cousin both worked in the same city, and over the past 2 years, the three of us would occasionally meet up on weekends. Not long ago, Jason's company sent him overseas for a project. He'd be gone for a year. At the crowded airport, I watched his figure disappear through the boarding gate, feeling a faint sense of emptiness. Beside me, my cousin sighed. I just don't get it. You're both single, you get along so well, why not give it a shot? Well, too late now. He's gone. I gave him a look but didn't answer. What he didn't know was that Jason and I had tried. For 2 months. At that time, my cousin happened to be away on a business trip. One night, I was hit with a sudden stomach infection. Half conscious, I called Jason. When I woke up, I was lying in a hospital bed, with Jason sitting beside me, still awake after watching over me all night. During that time, he took care of me, every day driving me home from work, cooking dinner together. Little by little, without saying anything, we started acting like a couple. After 2 months of dating, I accidentally found out he'd been offered an overseas assignment that would last a year. I thought about it for a long time before finally telling him I wanted to break up. That night, his hands froze mid-motion. He looked at me, voice hoarse. Why? I turned my face away and tried to sound calm. I don't believe in long-distance relationships. Especially not across countries. Chad and I had known each other since childhood. After all those years, even he had changed. So what chance did 2 months of love have? It wasn't that I didn't trust Jason. I was just afraid of giving my all again, only to end up broken once more. It's better to stop now, I said softly, before there's regret later. Jason tilted my chin toward him, leaning in slightly. What if I said, he whispered, I'm not going. I bit back the faint shiver that ran through me and shook my head gently. This is a great opportunity, Jason. Don't give it up for anyone, especially not for me. I don't need you to throw away your future just to make me feel secure. Jason was silent for a long time before answering softly, okay. He was the kind of person who rarely showed emotion, but that night, I could feel how hard he was trying to hold himself together. After he left, my life went on as usual. When I went home for the new year, I heard news about Chad again. They said he went to volunteer in the mountains after graduation, my mom told me. A few months ago, there was a landslide. He got hit by debris, his leg was injured badly. They brought him back home. He's having trouble walking now. She hesitated, then asked, he told his mom he'd like to see you. Do you want to visit him? I didn't even hesitate. No. I don't know if my mom passed that message along, but during all 10 days of the new year, even though we lived on the same street, I never saw him once. And in the years that followed, I still didn't. Half a year later, my cousin had a sudden wedding. When the bride tossed the bouquet, I had just finished a call with Jason. Funny thing, though we'd broken up, we'd never actually stopped talking. He'd often message me about little stories from abroad, adjust for the time difference just to tell me goodnight, send gifts on holidays, and even help me with work issues from afar. It didn't feel all that different from before. I was lost in thought when something flew toward me. Instinctively, I caught it, and realized it was the bouquet. I couldn't help but laugh. Then I heard a deep voice behind me. Anna. I froze. I glanced at my phone, our call had already ended. People around me started cheering, and my cousin was the loudest of them all. A strange realization hit me. I looked up. Jason was standing across the crowd, hands in his coat pockets, eyes steady on me. After all these years, his gaze hadn't changed. As he walked toward me through the noise and laughter, disbelief and warmth tangled inside me. I thought you weren't coming back for another year. He smiled faintly. The project finished early. Then, without hesitation, he pulled me into his arms, his chin resting lightly on my shoulder. "Anna," he murmured, "I missed you." Breathing in that familiar, grounding scent, I suddenly understood something. Time and distance were never the real obstacles. Determination and love were. If someone truly loves you, they'll make time, no matter how busy. They'll find a way, no matter how hard. If you really matter to them, both they, and time, will stand by your side. Not long after, I got married. When Jason and I exchanged rings, my cousin's applause was so loud it nearly shook the room.